Welcome to the Repo Procurement Podcast, the number one, Alan, procurement podcast in the world, where we dive deep into topics to keep procurement people up to date and ahead of their peers. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Go hit that like, upvote, whatever it is, hit it, as long as it's going up. Today, Alan, we're talking, this is a dirty term, a dirty acronym first, RTO, Return to Office. And we're going to go back and forth a little bit. So we got some statistics. We got some of our own takes. So let's get into it. I'm Tom Finn, bringing 15 years on the client side, procurement, finance, category management experience in large and small cap orgs.
And I'm Alan Veeck on the sell side of our street. And I've assembled a team of superhuman procurement professionals doing managed services at a little company that we call Summit.
It was like whatever, times 0.25 versus me on the intro there, Alan.
I'm just trying to do something a little different, keep people going,
turn it up.
Did he freeze? Did he freeze? No, he did not freeze.
All right, so going into RTO. So Alan, as prep, as we don't always do, but as prep for this podcast, I went and did a little research just around where things are today. So when we're recording this, we're in September of 2025. So it's been a bit of push back to the office, some of the big names, but I found a statistic from July of this year. So a few months ago, about 22% of U.S. employees worked remotely in July. And then basically half of that was hybrid. Half of that was fully remote. This is from Founders Report. But so that's kind of
impressive that it's that big. I'm surprised that it's 50-50.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's like even the 22%, I don't know. I don't know if that feels high or not. Maybe that feels about right. But, a fifth of the economy seems high.
And remind me that stat. A fifth of the economy was which bucket?
Was working remotely in some versions. So this considered hybrid as remote as well. So I guess I could see that. There's a lot of Mondays and Fridays, work from home, hybrid.
For sure.
But companies like Amazon, JP Morgan, AT&T, IBM, they've leaned in heavy to get back in the office. I mean, Jamie Dimon just like loves making fun of people at his all hands. Just being very strict about it.
Yeah. I am not a big Dimon fan, but that's for a separate podcast.
He wouldn't mind that. He wouldn't mind having his own separate podcast. The additional little stat here, just on preference and resistance, 64% of employees prefer remote or hybrid roles and are extremely likely to seek other jobs if forced back full time, which I think companies expect too. And the company's approach has been, I prefer folks leaving versus working from home forever. So that's been seemingly just things I've read in the news. So that's just a few statistics there. I thought the 22% one was pretty interesting, especially the half and half. I thought it would have been more hybrid at this point than fully remote.
Me too.
But it's basically 10% and 10%. So how are the companies doing this? And I think this is where we'll get into it, Alan, just kind of what are our takes on it. But basically, there's been this flexible hybrid. I mean, some are saying, okay, work from home. That's becoming less and less likely. I just do that full time, 5 days a week, 40 to 80 hours, whatever it is, you're doing it from home. But the other two have basically been flexible hybrid. So companies not necessarily being rigid, working with their folks to go in the office here and there. And then others have had with gradual returns, and others have had strict enforcements. Like we said, Jamie Dimon couldn't be more strict. He's basically saying you're either in or you're out, you're in the office or you're out of the company.
Yep.
So
I think the genesis of this podcast was, I heard from 3 different clients this week. One client that is considering return to office in 2026. And they said, boy, there's going to be a big attrition number that is attached to this, probably as high as 20%. So might bode well for a managed services business. Be on the lookout. But then 2 other clients, one that I was visiting last week that actually the end of this month, they've got a return to office, and then one just this week that had a return to office. The one that's this week, I've got the most details on. It is Tuesday through Thursday, so 3 days a week in the office, Monday through Friday. It's your call. You can come into the office. You could be remote. You could do whatever you'd like to do. So it triggered in my mind, hey, this could be an interesting topic for Tom and I to talk about.
Yeah, and what are maybe the first one, right? Are they patting themselves on the back about high attrition, or are they like, oh no?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I'm going to need to do some more digging to number one, get some real attrition numbers once the policies are in place. So I've only got one client that we're going to get some real attrition numbers probably in the next 2 months or 3 months. So I'll have to check back in on this. But I think, yeah, the thing that you mentioned is quite interesting. It is being called in many quarters a shadow layoff, right? A shadow reduction in force, a shadow RIF, because you'll kind of figure out who should be in the company and who shouldn't. And then I think the real gamble on the part of leadership is, do you lose your best? Do you lose your worst? Do you lose some combination of both? So that statistic, if we can get that, is also something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think it seems that the shadow layoff side, if it is 20%, they're kind of what they're getting is folks back in the office, and they feel that there's increased productivity. They feel that there's increased collaboration, and it's kind of like, I prefer people to be doing that than not, right? That's at least the mindset, right? If it's 20% of people that don't want to be part of my thing, I'm okay with that.
Yep. So you mentioned collaboration, you mentioned productivity. The other buzzwords that I hear around RTO are innovation, culture and connection, mentorship and development, which I think is probably one of the understated biggest reasons for this. You know, you think about I think about the mentorship that happens inside Summit Procurement between the Gen Xers, baby boomers, and then our
That's
youngest,
the best, right?
Youngest members of our team,
together,
who I think,
when it works.
we assume that we got to this kind of Gen X state fully formed. No, when we were in our 20s, it took a lot of development, a lot of mentorship to get us to where we are today. So I think that's probably the biggest unspoken reason for the return to office. And it's also the hardest thing to quantify. It's the hardest thing to convince people of, because it's a long-term slow burn. It is a benefit that accrues slowly, if at all, or it's almost imperceptibly. So I think it's a tough one to sell.
Yeah. There was I found this HBR article, Alan, and it kind of leaned towards, you always have to kind of think of who's writing it too, right? There's like, who reads HBR? Oh, it's CEOs. Who, like, what are CEOs thinking? I want my folks back in office. So sometimes you could imagine there's a little bit of, leaning into the audience.
Justification.
But, yeah, justification for reading HBR maybe. But they're, business heavy, C-suite heavy type focus. But they did say that there was evidence of like lower worker performance. That was just one thing. They didn't necessarily give a statistic from what I saw, but that was something that I think a lot of CEOs are just concerned about overall. But I've also seen the opposite, right? Some say, oh, that, hour commute, using that 2 hours otherwise. I know for me, when I started working remote, I put in more of the investment banker hours than I did previously, right? Like, I've been up more past midnight than previously when I was working in an office. Some of the other ones, I think a lot about development, just from the standpoint of, all right, business, you're going to get better at business. You're going to understand, if in this case, procurement, finance, whatever, HR, whatever it is that you're doing. Like, sitting next to somebody matters a lot, but then also there's just like this interaction that happens of just like friendship too.
Yeah,
that's good for people. Not everyone's super great over video. You don't get the same effectiveness as like whatever, getting a piece of pizza after work, right? Or during work, or going down to the lunch cart kind of thing. And then I've experienced one where it's like, you get hired into a company, you got to figure out your way. You got to be really out there, putting yourself out there. I've watched folks that are probably decent regularly flounder and not do well and leave, not at their own will, because they didn't know how to engage properly. Because not all leaders are the best at managing remotely either, right? So there's some of that as well.
Yeah, I love all of those thoughts. And the thing that came to mind as you were mentioning those things is why why should we ever develop a policy that is built for the average person? Shouldn't we custom tailor a policy to each individual? So as long as you can establish some sort of a nub of working from the office, return to office, so that there's some central group that could be joined. I, as a manager, would always want to target my team members and say, John, you specifically, you're a bit of an introvert. It would do you well, at least for the next year. Why don't we try having you come into the office 3 days a week to see if we can pull you out a bit, get you to meet people, get you an easier access to the skill set you need to develop than you'll probably develop behind a screen and behind a microphone. So, I like the notion of this bespoke development policy that might include an RTO for specific individuals.
Yeah, I agree. There's a term. I forget what the term is, Alan. It was it's around when students when they're going through school, there's like if you're tutored, you're going to do X amount better, like 5 times better is like there's a term for it. I can't remember, but I think that kind of matters, right? If you're able to individualize things, then folks can get a lot more out of the situation. But it takes a lot of time, right? Schools are not the best example. Everyone has an opinion about schools, but
Yep.
a 13-to-1 or a 20-to-1 ratio is a lot easier to do than a 1-to-1. 1-to-1
Yeah.
takes a lot more effort. But yeah, I mean, if managers are bought in and focused enough, and that's part of the culture, I think that can only benefit someone. You end up getting like, why do they get this versus that? But you're not necessarily saying that. You're saying, how do I make you individually better, and how can we set goals specific to you?
Yeah, that should always be the case. And when we talk about productivity or accountability and performance, in theory, that should not matter if you've got a good manager. But I think therein lies the rub. It always comes down to a good manager, doesn't it?
Always does.
Yeah. The saying is people don't leave companies; they leave managers.
Yeah.
And so it's all about having good managers. So maybe that, in the end, when we kind of start to do a root cause underneath this, we might find figuring out how to teach managers to develop individuals better would make this topic a lot less of a hot button issue, because you don't have to worry about accountability and productivity, because a good manager is going to see that, going to demand that, expect that of a good team member, and figure out how to get the most out of everybody, whether that be, hey, come into the office, or hey, you do better staying at home. Why don't you just stay at home?
Yeah. There are very few companies, I think, that teach that well. I don't think
I agree.
I don't think that's instilled in near any organization. It's probably like a 0.01%
Yep.
of total companies, right? But I think it would be a valuable next step in the evolution. I don't think many companies, I wasn't trained well on how to manage differently virtually versus not, right? And I think there
Nope.
is a bit of a difference. You can probably take more from managing virtually and apply it to in the office versus the reverse. Because I think if you're managing well virtually, then you're setting targets that have to do with actual outputs versus what a lot of folks do. In a lot of ways, folks learn to manage just by seeing someone staring at their screen.
Yep.
If you can't see the screen, you don't know if they're on ESPN.com or wherever, or just ChatGPT and stuff. But if they have output as assigned to them, I mean, that's really the way you want folks measured.
Yeah. It's interesting because in my business, the managed services business, it's almost as though we've always been behind a screen, because in most instances, except in the earliest days and in kind of the consulting model, in a consulting model, we would take all of our team members and we would put them on site 4 or 5 days a week, every week. But that's an old school model, and that even was disappearing in the early 2000s, well before COVID. So there was much more remote work that was already happening, because it was too expensive to send my team members to sit at a client site to do the work that we do. And so, maybe we already were seeing some of this in the early 2000s. So maybe we're kind of twice removed from this. And I think inside my business, we've tried to come up with ways to build a company ethos, a company culture, being remote first. That's our stated policy. We are a remote first business. We don't ever compel someone to come into the office, but we provide an office and say, if you'd like to come in, that'd be great. We've put in place certain countermeasures to make sure that good culture is developed, innovation happens, collaboration happens, teamwork happens. And I think any company can put those in place, and probably should put those in place, whether you've got a fully remote or even a hybrid policy, because those are best practices.
Yeah, I mean, with the policies themselves, I think it's just internal dialogue and discussion around what's the best thing for the company. And then someone comes out on top. I think that's a lot of how things are. I think there's just disagreement amongst a lot of C-suites, and then someone just is the louder voice, or there's a majority rule. On the like twice removed side of things, though, even within managed consulting, you would still generally call it the pre-COVID. Folks would still go into the office for their team, right? You wouldn't go to the client site necessarily, but you would still go to the office, right?
Yes, although I would say some sort of a hybrid loosey-goosey policy was much more common. So, sure. If Sally didn't show up into the office on Wednesday, you wouldn't be surprised. She's working from home. Okay, yeah, she's got doctor's appointment. She's got something going on. That was completely acceptable because you could do it.
Yeah. Once Teams, like the Teams type things, Teams, Slack, whatever folks are using, once that got like decent enough, I feel like that became more common. Like email,
for sure.
Email was like, okay, you could, but once there was like Teams and you can get on a video call, it was like,
well, I don't think that really happened until COVID. I mean, Teams was nothing pre-COVID. Teams was a miserable experience if it even existed pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And you think about Zoom was created in the 15, 16, 17, 2017 era, pre-COVID, and it was good. It was like, wow, finally we've got a video solution that might make some sort of hybrid work from home work. But there wasn't enough of an impetus. Then COVID came, forced it. Zoom got a bunch better. Teams went from 0 to 100. I think I don't know the other big platforms. Google Meet, I guess.
Yeah,
Same
Google
thing.
Meet,
I think it went
Google
from
Meet was
0
bad until like 6 months ago.
It was bad.
Yeah, now it's better. It's better, but like 6 months ago, it got better. It's a little late to improvement.
Yeah. So I think COVID was the forcing point for all of those things. And now it really does allow us, like, I don't know if you feel the same way. When I'm on video, I feel a degree freedom less than I do in the pre-COVID days when I would just be on a conference call. Conference calls were the norm pre-COVID, for me at least.
Yeah.
Coming up through kind of late 90s, early 2000s, 20 teens, you joined a conference call more frequently than you ever joined a video call.
For sure.
And, you could be anywhere doing just about anything on a conference call. But with a video call, you need to have your setup. You need to be dressed.
Conference call is this. Conference call is
professional.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Is that
mute? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, mute. What'd you say? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's right. I think it's you weren't listening at all. Yeah. I do think it is a good forcing mechanism, this video call, that does make the hybrid or the remote first policy work better.
Yeah, and folks had to do it for a year. Like everyone kind of had. If you were behind a desk, you were behind a screen for a year. Very few were outside of that. Yeah, for me, I guess in 2014 is when I remember we had it was in office, but I was working in a manufacturing company that had a lot of sites, and we had video calls for those. But you would do it from a conference room, right? So it was like after that, it was very kind of like it was very team focused because there was a lot of different manufacturing sites that folks had to still stay connected on. But yeah, I mean, I think it is a degree removed. I still say a handshake or a hug matters a lot more. So there is still like this difference. Like as soon as you meet somebody in person, your next interaction is different. It's just, I don't know if it's me or if it's human nature. I think it's human nature. That after you meet somebody, it's just, there's this different level of click. But nevertheless, a lot of folks are, I guess, still 10% are fully remote. But then I guess, Alan, where we were looking to take this was, what are the next steps for companies, right? All right, so 10%, 20% of the workforce is either, let's call it just 10% of the workforce is still fully remote. Maybe 10% is still 3 days a week on average, 2 to 3 days, maybe 1, maybe 4 days a month. Like where do we see this RTO or not going, and what do you think? What do you think here, Alan? Are the maybe a way to think about it?
Yeah, I do think there's going to be a pretty big push for RTO because it does feel like this is a tipping point issue. You have companies that are pushing it. I don't think there's any. We shouldn't be surprised by the fact that I have about half of my client base currently making this move right now. And I think when you look at it being end of 2025, early 2026, this is a full 5 years removed from COVID, 5+ years removed from COVID, where I think it's like after a merger or acquisition where you kind of let the acquired company sit and do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't try and get in and jostle and change too much and force them into the new corporate culture. There's this kind of cooling off period, this in between period. I think that's what that 5 years was, but now it's like, okay, daddy's home, time to come back to the office.
Yeah.
And so it does feel like there's a tipping point now where it's beginning to happen. So I think we're going to have a discontinuity. There is going to be, it's anticipated 10 to 20% resignation that happens with a return to work, return to office policy. I think the 20% sounds high. Maybe the 10% even sounds high to me.
Mm-hmm.
Only because we've done podcasts in the past couple of months, Tom, where we've talked about it's the job market isn't great out there. It's tough to find a thing. So I don't know that you're going to find a bunch of people resigning, at least not resigning until they find a new thing. And
Sure.
the new thing, if only 10% of the new things are remote first, then 90% are going to be, yeah, you got to return to office anyway. So I don't know that you're going to find that remote thing. So I think that we got this period of discontinuity. How long will it be? It's probably going to be a couple of years as companies figure things out. I think there's going to be some reversion. Some people are going to say, whoa, we lost some superstars. We lost more people than we wanted to lose. Let's go back to status quo of hybrid, make your own rules, and let's figure something new out. And I think that's very reactive. So I think the Jamie Dimons of the world might be disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, he might lose more people than he really wants to, just because he's making his point. But I kind of see a similar thing happening, Alan, or have similar expectations, because you were working locally, generally speaking, called pre-COVID. COVID happens, people were reacting, everyone leans into work from home. I know companies who are hiring people in the middle of nowhere, in different countries,
Yes.
at US rates, just because they were the air quote best. So it kind of exploded out. And then now it's coming to the point where it's like, well, if we're going to hire and if we're in Kentucky, maybe we still leave it remote, but maybe we lean towards the person in Kentucky that's 30 minutes down the road, or especially like New York. Like, why not? Folks can get to New York. There's a lot of trains. Like, they should be New York local. Maybe that's the hybrid side of it, but yeah, they should be able to come in 2 to 3 days a week, of course. Like, I want my folks in office. So it's kind of this like explosion out to like, well, if we're going to be work from home, let's freaking get anybody. Let's get whoever we want. Let's get the best of the best. And now it's kind of reverting back. And I'd imagine it would be just through the job hiring process where you're going to see less being remote, or even if it's remote, it's going to be remote but preferred close. And if you can find somebody good, you're going to take them more local. So I'd imagine things will become more regionalized over the next. It's probably going to take another 5 years. I thought everyone would be back to the office after 2 years. I like in my mind when everything happened, it was like 2 years, everyone's back in the office and seats. But I mean, I was way off there. So predictions are, my prediction is just making it up, but it is my thought. That's the process.
Predictions are tough.
Yeah.
I think that you highlighted the one thing that does become a game changer for remote work, which is you're no longer limited by geography. You're no longer limited to say, where am I going to find the best candidate? If you're truly trying to find the best candidate, then like I brag to my prospects and my clients that our remote first policy allows us to get the best of the best, no matter where they are. And I think that's generally true. I think maybe the right next step in terms of how you think about being remote first is much like the warehouse problem, where you think about a hub and spoke distribution model. The distribution companies are always asking themselves, what is the optimal number of warehouses I need to have spread across the country so that I can get my goods to my consumer as quickly as possible and not be inefficient in terms of having too many. And I think it's the same sort of thing. We're starting to see inside my business, inside of our business, some hubs developing. So yes, Pittsburgh is probably where just about half of our team lives. But we're seeing hubs in Indiana, hubs down in Florida, kind of Florida, Georgia region. And I could very quickly see us developing a policy where we say, okay, we're going to look entirely remotely, look at all geographies, but these 5 are preferred. And if you could find somebody in that geography, what you could have is you could have regional work together days where you have some notion of people getting together and having a sense of camaraderie and a sense of belonging, a sense of mentorship and development that you might need to have happen. I think you could develop a truly kind of hybrid remote policy that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just like I love the fact that I can work remotely, go to the office if I want, even though it's a bit of a commute. But I mean, there is definitely, you're missing things. Just like if I put my, company hat on, and like if I was a C-suite at any company, you kind of think, am I missing something? Is my team, is that water cooler talk matter, right? Everyone kind of used to joke about it. Now they're like, well, maybe, that's where people also get inspiration.
Yes.
And you're just chatting about whatever happened in the NFL or MLB or NBA in the prior week, but then sparks well, hey, I was actually thinking about that thing we were talking last week, and did you consider this? And the person's like, oh crap, no, I didn't. Like, you got a sec? Like, no, 15 minutes. Okay, let's go to the conference room in 15 minutes and just like draw that out on the whiteboard. Like, I used to whiteboard stuff all the time. I was like the king of the whiteboard. And I was like, let's move that here. Let's go over here to the whiteboard. And let's make sure like we understand what we're talking about, lay it out and draw it out and whatever it was. I love the whiteboard. I miss the whiteboard, Alan. So,
I bet you got a whiteboard in the office, Tom.
I mean, I have one, but then when you're doing it on your own, I should have one.
It's got all your kids
draw for people.
It's got all your kids' scribblings on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's unused, basically unused. But I mean, but those things are, I think, impactful when you think about how can companies innovate and like move the next level. I've always felt that remote is fine operationally, but next step innovations is like, it could still happen and will happen remotely, but being in the office, chatting through something, you get inspired, you get thoughtful, you get insightful through others.
Yep. I think this could be a good topic for us to come back and touch on a couple of times a year, maybe with some more data, maybe with some more local anecdotes where, I bring some things from my business, I bring some things that I'm hearing from my clients. I think that could be maybe even a guest who might be at a big company who's thinking through these things and really can see a bunch of innovative other third options. Like, I think as I was thinking through this interesting topic, I thought, well, for a long time, probably 20 years, we toyed with this idea. Do you remember it, Tom, of the 4-day work week?
Yeah, I used to have one. I used to have also 980s at some point. You ever do the 980s,
okay.
Alan? Yeah.
No, I mean, I've heard of it.
Yeah, 9 hours, 5 days a week, and then the following one you get off on the Friday. So it still adds up to 80 hours over 2 weeks.
Which is both of those are really cool. And shouldn't those be considered in this mix? I think they should. You think about how RTO might feel like a punishment to a team member. Well, something like that, where you do a 4-day work week, or you called it a 980. You do a 980. That feels like a win. That feels like a reward.
It was at the time. It was at the time.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone have like off days, so half the company was off on one Friday, then the next Friday, and it's quite nice. That's when dentist appointments happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. When everything happened. So I think that mixing in some of those rewards with what's perceived to be a punishment could make this interesting. So maybe we could pull some guests in who know the landscape much better than we do, because I think this is a recurring topic that we should hit at least a couple times a year.
Yeah, so add us with the best P&O HR folks and talk to them. If anyone here is listening that has good experience or bad experience, we'll chat through that as well. Love to connect.
We want you. All right, Tommy. On behalf of your humble hosts here at the Rebuild Procurement Podcast, we are Tommy Finn, the guy who puts the Finn in finance, and your OG in procurement, Alan Veeck, hoping that you will make this a powerful and productive week in procurement. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Show me, and you won't hear the word rebuild.